Head to Home Depot and get this board. Now it's time to get started on this project. First, I laid the board on a flat surface and began tracing an organic shape following the wood grain all the way around the board. Next, I secured the board to my work surface using a couple of clamps, then used a jigsaw to cut out the shape I traced. Once the board was cut, I used my orbital sander to sand both sides of the board, starting with 100 grit sandpaper and working up to 220 grit sandpaper. After sanding was complete, I wiped the board down well, then applied 2 coats of gel stain in the color hickory to both sides of the board according to the directions on the can. Once the board was dry, I applied 2 coats of a satin polyurethane, again according to the directions on the can, making sure to sand in between coats with 220 grit sandpaper. Head over to your local Walmart garden center or go to walmart.com and grab 4 of these $10 planters. First, I wiped the rims of the planters with a clean cloth. Then I applied an even layer of a strong construction adhesive on the rim of one planter. Next, I flipped the second planter upside down and placed it on top of the planter with the adhesive. Once the adhesive was dry, I used a dark wood filler to fill in the gaps between the planters and then allowed them to dry again. Once dry, I used 220 grit sandpaper to sand the bowls and the wood filler down. My goal for sanding was to remove the shiny texture from the planters and to make the wood filler seamless. I allowed the planters to dry for a few hours, then used a chip brush and the same gel stain I used for the board to create a faux wood grain effect on the planters. I applied the construction adhesive to the tops of the planters, then smoothed it out in an even layer with a foam brush. I placed the wooden board on top, making sure it was centered on the planters, then weighed it down with heavy books and allowed the adhesive to dry for 24 hours. Now I have a beautiful coffee table that is the perfect addition to my living room. I hope that this inspired you to make your very own coffee table. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and see you next time.
I think you'll be amazed at what you can create using discarded furniture. I took some bamboo sticks, which I had purchased from Amazon, and I measured the length of the front of the drawer. I cut the bamboo sticks to this length and decided that I was going to remove and discard the top drawer. I removed the old doorknobs from the remaining drawers, and then I sanded them down lightly. I spaced out my bamboo sticks, and then I applied them, simply using liquid nails. I took the drawers and the cabinets outside, and I spray painted them. While I was outside, I also cut a thin piece of plywood so that it would replace where that top drawer was that I had removed. I simply slid this into place and continued painting the entire nightstand. I added new pulls, which I had purchased online as well. It was a really quick and easy project to do, and I love my new fluted nightstand.
Grab the brightest paints you have and use them to create a one-of-a-kind piece. I've gone ahead and given it a good cleaning. I'm using chalk paint because I know it will adhere to whatever paint is already on this piece. Just putting on blocks of paint where I think I'd like that color to be when I'm done. Now that I have all of my blocks done, I want to give it a spritz of water. Keeping the paints nice and wet helps to blend them really easily together. And I'm going to keep switching paint brushes because I want to try and blend only the 2 colors that are next to each other. While the front is drying, I'm going to go ahead and paint the other sides with the bright pink color. To finish the piece off, I'm going to just dry brush on a little more color. This little wardrobe certainly is bright and cheery now. It's fit for anyone who loves a vibrant pop of color. I grabbed a can of regular oven cleaner and I'm going to start by spraying the entire piece generously. After leaving the oven cleaner on this piece for about a half an hour, using a stiff bristle brush, I'm going to start scrubbing. I can already see the oven cleaner is working to remove the stain. To get the remaining oven cleaner off, I'm going to give it a quick rinse with the hose and then leave it to dry out in the sun. I want to do another round of oven cleaner though to remove the stain from the underside and a few little areas that I missed the first time. Now that the wood is completely dry, I want to finish up with a quick sanding of the wood. I can't believe how wonderful this piece turned out using the oven cleaner hack.
I'm going to give this old chair a makeover. I've cleaned it really well, and when it's dry I'll give it a light sanding, and then I'm going to give it 2 coats of primer. So I'm laying down quite a thin layer of the varnish, making sure that the seat is covered. I'm working in 2 halves here, and then using the spray bottle, spray the back of the paper. So using the scrunched up piece of plastic wrap, start in the center and work your way out, smoothing the paper as you go. Then when you've done that half, do the same thing on the other side. When it's all completely dry, use a very sharp knife to remove any excess paper. I'm going to use a spray varnish first, and then when that's dry, I gave it 3 coats of a water-based varnish. Here's my chair. I actually decided to do the backrest as well. I'm really happy with how this has turned out.
Found this beat up table at the thrift store last week and it's quite damaged. I'm going to start by painting my table white. I'm going to add all kinds of bright colored paint into my container, and I'm going to add some texture into the paint, and I'm going to use the Fusion Fresco powder, but you could use baking soda and mix it into each of those colors. I'm going to start putting it over the stencil, and we want to start just spreading this all over, and I'm going to hold down the stencil as much as possible here. Okay, and once you have your stencil completely covered like this, you want to very gently try and take off a little bit off of the top. We can peel up that stencil. How gorgeous is that? Who would have thought that you could turn a $7 thrift store find into this beautiful piece of art with just a stencil and some paint? I'm going to give the surface of the cabinet a quick sanding. I'm going to paint the cabinet with some creamy white chalk paint. I'm going to brush on a layer of decoupage glue and then lay on my paper. So I'm going to use my hands to flatten it out. I want to slice off the rest of the paper and want to give it one final coat of the decoupage glue. I can use a sanding block to gently take off any excess. I want to also remove the paper from those. I'm going to finish it all off with a coat of wax. My filing cabinet looks incredible now.
I've got this old glass table. Get it all cleaned up. I'm going to tape around all of the edges. Next, we're going to do that 2-part epoxy. We're going to pour it halfway down the table. Next, we're going to mix a little bit of teal. We're going to pour it out. We're going to go with a darker green. And you're going to start spreading out that white. Start getting rid of all that flaky paint. Start spraying it with some good spray paint. It was time to put on the darkest color we have. Put some more waves on and spread it all out. What a wonderful addition to the back porch.
To get the table ready, I'm going to start by giving it a quick clean. Next, I want to give it a light sanding. I want to wipe it again. I like to start with the pedestal first and then do the top. I'm going to add and combine some water with some white paint. To apply the wash, I'm going to use this chip brush because the bristles are natural and uneven. To soften up those lines a little bit, I can wipe them with just a damp paper towel. I absolutely love how pretty this table is now and how much the lighter color changes its look. I found this fun shower curtain. I'm going to start by painting the table. Use a utility knife and run it along the edge. I want to seal the paint to protect it. Put a layer of Mod Podge all over the glass, and now I'm going to lay the shower curtain onto it. I want to trim off the excess, add one more layer of Mod Podge over the top for added protection. This little table is so cute now, perfect for sunny days on the balcony.
Head down to the local hardware store and choose some of the inexpensive whiteboards. I brought the table outside and set it up. All I had to do was take the 1x6s and lay them out. First thing I want to do is measure the board for some of my cross beams. I'm going to cut those a little bit short using my miter saw, and then I'm going to mark out where I'm going to place the boards because I need to lay some good wood glue down. Then I'm going to take my cross board and use finish nails to put it in, and it's time to put the side pieces on. I'm going to use some 1x3s with miter joints. We're going to put the glue on there and use the nails to put it in place. I'm going to go ahead and use some wood putty, sanded the whole table down, and it was time for staining. And I go ahead and do the whole table, clear polyurethane. Go ahead and put the new wood table down on top, and it turned out beautiful.
I'm giving this little side table a makeover. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually give it a coat of black paint. Now I've taken some creamy white paint and I've added water to it. I've ripped up some newspaper and I'm going to apply some of this paint. Taking pieces of the scrunched up paper, I press it into the paint and wiggle it around. Keep repeating the process until you get to the end. Now the tabletop is dry, I'm going to use this stencil. I'm going to give it 2 coats of this gloss decorator's varnish. Here's my finished tabletop. I think it looks quite effective. It's a very easy technique to do. I've drawn a line straight down the middle of the drawers and I'm going to use a red and a blue paint. When the first colour has dried, I then take the other colour and paint on top of it. Then take your spray bottle and spritz over the wet paint and then set a timer for 3 minutes. When the time is up, we have to start removing the water now. And I use a toilet roll. Now I'm moving on to the top of the dresser and I've split the top in half. Now all my drawers are done and dry and I'm taking a stencil and some modelling paste and applying it to the stencil. I finished off the dresser by doing the stencil again on the top, and here it is. I hope you enjoyed this and you're inspired to have a go at this crazy technique. I'm going to apply both these colours, the green and the blue, randomly over the top. I'm now going to apply one coat of a water-based top coat. I've used some cardboard and I'm just going to cut one edge, cutting very randomly on the bottom, grooves in it. In here I have some dark green paint and I've combined it with their water-based top coat. I apply the green paint on top, okay, and then taking my cardboard, going to randomly scrape into it, okay? So then we go on to the next bit, working just randomly, but I decided to follow some of the contours with a metallic gold gel pen. And here's my finished table. I actually decided to paint the edges gold to tie in the gold that I had done on the top.
I've got an eyesore in the front of my house, and it's my garbage can. I've got an inexpensive idea, and it happens to use pallets. I want to make sure that they're just wide enough for the garbage can to go in and out without rubbing. The next step is I got to cut some railings, actually. I'm going to measure about 7.5 inches down from the top. This is going to give me some good markings that I need to put each one on each side of the pallets. And I'm going to cut the less desirable pallet that's going to go on top. When I put it on top, then I'm going to secure it with some screws. I grabbed some old fence pallets that I had that were redwood, and I'm going to go ahead and just brad nail these on the top. I am also going to put it on the side. That way it looks more like a little bit of a door frame or anything when I put it on. Once it's all put together, then I can slide my garbage can in. I think it turned out really nice.
Start by measuring your space. We're using waterproof crib mattresses, so you'll build your couch around the crib mattress measurements. Cut the pallets using a circular saw. Be sure to watch out for nails. Cut all the way across, then flip over and cut the other side. After you've cut all the pallets, start stacking. We used a total of 12 pallets, cut to fit for our outdoor couch. Use a nail gun to attach painted plywood fronts and trim board. This part's a lot easier if you have a second set of hands. Now that the couch is assembled, you can add the crib mattresses. Ours were shipped covered in plastic, so we left that on to make them extra waterproof. Cover the mattresses with fitted sheets. These are inexpensive and easy to throw in the washing machine. Lastly, decorate with throw pillows and enjoy with your favorite furry friend.
Seeing some wood pallets gave me an idea. The first thing I did was mark a line with a Sharpie where the back of the bench and the seat part would connect. I measured the width of the boards and cut my materials at least twice as wide. I created tufted channels by laying down the mattress topper with the smooth side up toward me, then lay the batting on top of that. I only went down to the Sharpie line that I drew as my guide so that I wouldn't have padding in that area. I cut the mattress topper back in this area so that it would fit around a little bit better. Once you have those in place, add your material over top and you can start to see how it's going to look. I secured the fabric at the bottom where my Sharpie drawn line was. I lifted my pallet and started securing things in the back. At the top, I secured the fabric as well. Now, for the bench. I cut my second pallet in half lengthwise. Then I cut the mattress topper, batting, and fabric to size. I secured everything in place and then flipped it over to work on the bottom. I chose to reinforce the sides of my bench with 1x4s on both sides. For the legs, I just used leftover wood, joined them together, and then secured them to the bench. Now it was time to put it together. Once the bench and backing were secured, I could start working on finishing the top. To do this, I laid a piece of fabric, pretty side down, over the top. Then I attached the tack strip along the top, making sure to staple it onto the edge of the wood. I added a 1x4 along the bottom of the bench. Again, I added mattress topper and secured that in place. Then I added the fabric and tack strip along the top. I wrapped the fabric along to the side and secured it in place. This was a fun challenge to take on. It was sturdy, the exact height we wanted, and at a price that fit the budget.
I grabbed a free pallet for this genius garden hack. I used a hammer to remove some of the boards carefully. I left the nails in the boards so that I could use them again. I made 3 rows with 3 boards tight together on the bottom row, 2 boards together in the middle, and 2 boards near the top. Used a reciprocating saw to cut the extra off. I flipped the pallet over and followed the same pattern with 3 boards together on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the top. I cut more 1x4s to fill in the bottom of each section and secured it with 3 nails on the front, and I hammered in 3 nails on the back side. I gave the front a quick sand. Next, I filled each section with soil and planted my favorite herbs. I used my Cricut to print stencils to paint labels for each section. When applying the stencil, I first sealed it with Mod Podge and then I let it dry before painting with acrylic paint. Once the paint was near dry, I removed the vinyl and did some touch-ups with my black acrylic paint pen. And now I have the most beautiful herb garden that can also be hung on the wall.
First thing I'm going to do is I took a spare rug that I had, so I'm just going to unroll this. I've gotten a couple of these pallets. I'm going to put these on my rug, and I'm just going to lay these down right here. And then I'm going to get started setting up for our picnic. My backyard goes downhill a little bit, so I've taken a couple of containers because I want these to be even so that people can dine on them. And one right here. So I have these great hard slate placemats. These will be for my actual place settings. The next thing I'm going to do is dress these up. So I'm going to use these kind of rather bohemian looking blue placemats. I'm just going to use these reed wrapped glasses. I'm going to use my pretty Lenox plates, these wooden handle flatware. When I'm going really casual, all I want to do with my cloth napkins is gather them in the middle and just like so, and just tie them in a knot. And I'm just going to toss those right in the middle of each one of my plates. So I just took battery lights like so and fed them right down inside my jars. Just let the wire go right down underneath the pallet. I have my jars all lit up and all the way down the middle of our table, and I just went to my closet and grabbed a couple of scarves, and I'm just gonna kind of weave those in between my jars. So I am going to add all kinds of blue cushions, but I wanted to show you how easy and how fun it is. If you have a source, if you can find a couple of pallets, even if you can just borrow them, to put together this kind of a fun backyard pallet picnic.
We're going to grab us an old pallet. We need to cut a section of the pallet out. Go ahead and separate it, but don't throw it away. We'll need those boards. Take the section that we cut, and we need to find the middle. That is how we're going to get our two ends perfectly aligned. Take that part that we cut off earlier and separate it and remove some of the boards with the nails in them. Just go ahead and grab a hammer, and you're just going to start tapping on the back side of the nail. You're going to pull that nail right out, and we're going to place them across the top of the two pieces we cut. Then I used a nail gun just to put it in place. This thing is going to be so strong, it doesn't take much to hold it together. Take a little bit extra, the boards that we have left over, and we're going to build a little bit of a shelf. We're not going to secure it because it's time to show you this final project. This is great for outdoor. It looks rustic, and it's great for cooking s'mores and making some hot chocolate, especially with that sliding shelf. Last week I walked out of my office and there they were right in the hallway. Some really good pallets. First thing I did was lay it down and start cutting around the edges. On the middle section, just take a crowbar, hammer it in, and you're going to pull it up. Don't pull too hard. You want to do it from both sides. Now all you got to do is take out the nails. They're easy to do. Just lay it on a table, tap on one side, use the bar on the other, and pull it out. Once you get all of your nails pulled, you're going to have a nice big pile of wood to use. Next step is to grab some crates from Michael's. I'm going to take 2 of these and glue them together, and then use clamps to hold them together while the glue dries. Once you get your 2 pairs, you're going to space them apart. Take 3 of your boards from the pallet, and we're going to use those to hold our 2 pairs of crates together. Now I'm going to take that pallet wood and I'm going to square up the ends. These are going to be the legs. And then I will take the front, the same length, and put it there, glue and nail. Now, the support boards for the pallet, I'm going to screw those in the back. Now it's time for more glue. Again, I'm going to use pallet wood. On the pallet boards, I cut 1 piece, just enough to have a little bit of an overhang, and then I put a little piece in between. Once I get it all glued down, I just took those brad nails and put them into place. Now it's time to work on the back. Wanted to make sure it wasn't too tall, but I took some of that pallet wood and nailed it into the sides. It's time to put some hanging hooks on. Just screw them right into the boards. Now, let's put this thing in place, and I went to Dollar Tree and grabbed a bunch of items for only $1. This is our potting board right here. It just turned out great, and all of this stuff I bought from Dollar Tree. We need a skinny roll of tape, And we also need some clear Elmer's glue. And our template for today is going to be an outside window. We got to put some of that tape on the window. Now, you can go ahead and take the tape and mask it to the grid that's already on the window, or you can just go random like I'm doing it. But the next step to this is we got to grab that Elmer's glue. Once we get some paint in there, all you got to do is just go back and forth with it, and it shakes up really nice. Next, move on to your second color. These are our 4 colors we're going to go with. Now, because it's on the Elmer's glue, it's actually non-toxic, and I used a foam brush to transfer it to the window. It's going to take multiple coats, but the glue and the paint dries really fast. You can actually put a coat on within an hour after you put it on. Once it dries overnight, you're going to take a knife and very gently, we don't want to scratch the window. If you try to pull the tape with it out using the knife, it may pull the glue off. Just go ahead and start pulling the tape off. It's another thing. When you're done with this and you want to change it or just take it off later, it peels right off. That's our final project. In the afternoon, when the sun hits the window, it just glows inside the room and gives it multiple colors.
We are going to make some beautiful home decor items using clear Elmer's glue. Up first, we are going to fill this vase with the clear glue. Then we're going to add in some clear and white decorative pebbles. Now I'm going to grab some faux flowers. Now I'm just going to stick these into that glue. Once you've got them arranged just right, set this aside and let it dry. Now you have a permanent floral arrangement that looks like it has these water and stones in the bottom of it. This is going to look great in your home. Next up, we are going to grab a couple glass mason jars. So you're going to grab a small dish and you're going to fill it with clear glue and a little bit of water. I used about 2 tablespoons of glue and about 1 tablespoon of water. Then I'm going to drop in a little bit of food coloring. Then stir it up until it's mixed really well. Grab your mason jar, make sure it's nice and clean. Pour that dark blue mixture into the jar and swirl it around so it covers everything. Once you've swirled it all around, you can dump the excess back into the original container. Now we want to let this drip for a little bit. Let it drip for about 10 minutes. Take a paper towel, wipe off any excess drips that are around the rim of the jar. Then place this upside down on a piece of parchment paper. Pop it in your oven at 175 for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, take it out, turn it right side up, and let it cool completely. These jars make great decor around your home. Just remember, they're not vases, you can't fill them with water, but you can definitely display some dried flowers in them. I'm going to take the piece of glass out, and I'm going to draw a grid of squares and rectangles with black puffy paint. When that's done, I want to let that dry completely. So I'm going to use a little bit of clear glue and a few drops of paint. So on that piece of glass where we added the puffy paint, when it's completely dry, I'm just going to use a popsicle stick and transfer some of those beautiful blue colors onto the glass. But a little goes a long way because you don't want this to run over the black line. Once everything is done, you can grab a toothpick and go back and just pop any of those bubbles that are in there. Then set this aside and just let it be. Once it's dry, pop that glass back in the frame, set it up by a window, and you have a beautiful piece of faux stained glass for your home.
The carpet in my office needed to be replaced, but it just wasn't in the budget. But torn and crumpled paper was. Mixing equal parts of glue and water, I made the paste for the floor. Using a wide paintbrush, I applied the glue to the floor, making sure I got underneath the baseboards. Then I laid down the paper and brushed the glue on top. I continued to apply the glue to the floor, then the torn paper, and then more glue over top of the torn paper. I switched out my brush for a foam roller to cover larger areas, but I kept the brush to use underneath the baseboard. After the glue dried, I applied stain to the floor using a foam roller. After the stain dried, I applied coat after coat of polyurethane. Using a lamb's wool applicator made this process so easy. I really love this floor, can you tell? I hope this inspires you to tackle this very easy project.
Quick trip to my local Dollarama. Separate the layers, cut the napkin so that you have enough to cover the body of the jar. Now I'm using some clear glue mixed with a tiny amount of water, paint it onto the side of the glass jar. Then lay down the paper nap and then using a piece of scrunched up plastic wrap, use that to pat down the napkin and eliminate any wrinkles that way. Draw around the lid because that will be the right size and cut out the piece of napkin, stick it to the bottom of the jar in the same way. Using the same process, cut out a circle for the top and a little strip for the edge and stick it in place. When it was dry, I decided to give it 2 coats of a gloss varnish. I have taken a battery-operated puck light and stuck it into the lid of the glass jar. And here are my finished chinoiserie jars. Don't they look great? I made a trip to my local dollar store, taking a terracotta pot. I draw a very random shape. Taking the clear glue, I pour some onto the side of the pot, picking up some of the blue gravel and press it down. I then put some of the silver glitter glue around the edge, and here is my geode terracotta pot. So I put 2 spoons of cornstarch and 2 spoons of Elmer's glue, and that's what we're looking for. I'm going to use this really lovely mandala stencil. Going very carefully, I'm now going to apply it. The whole stencil is covered, and now for the moment of truth. Very, very, very carefully lift this off. This is the next day now. I left it overnight to dry. Also sanded it very lightly. Okay, just going to give it 1 coat, then leave that to dry now. Just look how subtle this little design is on this tabletop. And all that with cornstarch and glue. It's really amazing.
So we're going to start with this cellophane piece here. So I'm going to make the line here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Just put a clear dot, or you could run a clear line. And next, I'm going to go ahead and place the cellophane onto the glue and glass. So I'll go ahead and continue putting the glue and the cellophane up on all the windows. Here it is, all finished, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
I took the table apart, separating the glass from the metal ring. Laid the glass on top of the picture. I mixed 2 parts white glue to 1 part black craft paint. I outlined the sun. And once the lines had dried, I cleaned up any lines that were too thick by cutting them away using a utility knife. I painted the background using a 1-inch wide brush. I added designs to each panel. I gave the paint 2 coats of spray sealant. I used a medium grit sanding sponge. I painted the metal bright blue. The table looks great in our outside space, and friends can't believe that I painted it.
I'm going to stick these grasses and weeds to this glass. Cut off these extra bits on the bottom. Now I'm going to stick the tissue paper to the vase. I'm going to use a glue stick and then just rolling it, pulling it tight on this side, some more glue down, and gently stick that in place too. I'm going to go around and just trim and just see how pretty these are. Really, really simple project to do.
Head to your local Dollar Tree and pick up a lot of peel and stick subway tile. Take a degreaser spray and a rag and make sure the surface is clean. Get out the peel and stick tile sheets and begin at the top on one side of the space. Peel and stick to secure the subway tile to the existing tile. They interlock, so it makes this process a lot easier. Work your way around the tub. Take a metal ruler and a blade to trim the excess on the tub surface. Take caulk and apply it to the base and the creases for a more professional and waterproofing finish. There you have it, a cheap way to create your own easy DIY subway tile backsplash for your home for less than $50.
We started with a completely bare backsplash. Measure the length and height of each panel will need to be cut to. Now mark the panels to the correct size to be cut and cut them with the saw of your choice. I used the jigsaw and a table saw to make the cut. I found it easiest to lay the panels flat on the ground in a line as I cut them to make sure they lined up exactly. Next, you will need to take the panels in and mark where notches may need to be cut in order for the panels to fit under the cabinets. Take a tube of toothpaste and squirt a little on the corners of each outlet. Then slide your panels into place. Then remove them again and the toothpaste will have transferred to the back of the panel, showing where you need to cut the hole for the outlet. Now you're ready to set your panels in place. First, put construction adhesive on the back of the panels and then press them into place. Use a nail gun or panel nails to attach the panels into place. Now it's time for the faux finish. Sporadically paint the bricks various colors. I use white, tan, black, gray, and brown. Then use a wet rag to blend all the colors together. Lastly, spread the spackle on like a thin coat of icing.
So this is grout, like what you would use for towel. It's pre-mixed. Where the border would be on the brick, it's where you're going to put this stuff with your fingers.
I hope this inspires you to do a faux brick backsplash for your farmhouse kitchen.
So I went to the dollar store and I bought 3 bags of those vase filler gems. After sorting them, I washed them off using Blue Dawn and water and then laid them out to dry. I drew lines from the edge of the vanity to meet the mirror line. I applied a thin coat of mastic using a small notched trowel. Then the fun began as I pressed the gems into the mastic. I worked in small sections so the mastic wouldn't dry too quickly. Once I was done, I mixed the grout. I mixed 1 cup of grout to a half a cup of water. I applied the grout in small sections, making sure I was pushing it between each of the gems. I wanted to make sure that every spot was filled in between them. After 1 hour, I checked again, and yep, it was nice and dry. Using a large sponge and plain water, I washed away all of the excess grout. I removed the painter's tape that I had placed on the top of the vanity and applied caulk, smoothing it out with my finger. Wow, what a difference it makes, and no more splattered wall.
After updating this 1980s kitchen, I knew it needed something more. So I decided to use an adhesive tile mat along with mosaic tile sheets, white grout, and a sponge. The adhesive mat comes on a roll. When it came to the outlets, I made sure the power was off and I simply cut the mat with a razor blade so that I could create an opening around the outlet and disposal switch area. When I was ready to place the tile, I removed the white cover sheet. You can use spacers when installing the tile sheets, but I felt comfortable working without them. The work progressed pretty easily, and I was lucky that, at the first corner, the tiles ended in just the right spot. When I got to the second corner, I wasn't quite so fortunate. My husband was helping me out at the tile saw while I was doing the installation, and he went ahead and cut right down the tile mosaic sheet for me. When I got to the outlet and light switch area, I was able to press the tile into place just very lightly, and then cut away the tile. I added the grout and then went over it with a damp sponge to get the grout residue off of the tile surface. I rinsed and repeated the cleaning with the damp sponge several times. I added the outlet covers, my decor items, and then I was done. It was a really quick and easy project, and I think the kitchen really changed as a result. Before you spend money on expensive tile, check out this $100 idea. I used shiplap and cut it to size the length of my kitchen wall, and then I painted it using a paint sprayer. I placed my first piece in the kitchen, and I made sure to mark where the outlets were. I needed to cut just the little tongue part of the shiplap to make sure that it would not go over the outlet area. I did this using a tool called a multi-tool. It worked well for me and was really quick. I simply placed the shiplap in place and secured it using a nail gun. I continued this way up the wall. It took me 4 pieces of shiplap to get to the top of the backsplash and fit right underneath the cabinet. After that, I put my new appliances in and added little trim pieces to the edges to give my project a finished look. The entire project took only 8 pieces of shiplap total, which ended up costing well under $100 and taking only a couple of hours to complete the project from start to finish.
So I went to the dollar store and bought 35 bags of gems. They were really dusty, so I removed them from their little bags and washed them with mild soap and water. After washing them, I laid them out on a towel to dry. Several months ago, I completed a backsplash in my bathroom above the sink. People commenting on that post asked for the entire wall to be covered with gems. So here you go. I began by drawing a level line a little higher than the backsplash. Then I measured the height of that line from the floor and made marks on the wall and connected the line. Another comment on that original backsplash post was that I didn't create a pattern on the wall. So on this one, I decided to draw some seaweed. After the pattern was drawn, I began to apply mastic inside the seaweed lines, filling them in with the different sizes of green gems. I worked on small sections of the wall at a time, working my way up the wall. Once I got to where I had put the original backsplash, I added the mastic and continued with the 3 different colors of gems. It was a little hard working around the toilet, but hey, with my skinny fingers, I made it work. I really liked using the different sizes of the green inside the seaweed. I think it gave it more of a texture and a really interesting look. When I finished applying the gems to the wall, I measured and cut a piece of chair rail and then fastened that to the wall with a brad nailer. I then took mastic and filled in the gap and then added more gems. I mixed my grout until it was the consistency of mashed potatoes. I applied the grout to the wall using a putty knife. And working in small sections, I added the grout and then removed the excess with a wet sponge. I love the way it turned out, and you can't tell where the previous backsplash ended and where the new mosaic begins. I also liked having the pattern of the seaweed, so thanks for the suggestion. I hope this inspires you to look for hidden gems at your dollar store.
I recently noticed that my cabinets and my appliances were starting to turn yellow in my laundry room. It started to annoy me, so I decided to give the room a little love, but on a very tight budget. I used painter's tape and taped off the back edge behind the washer and dryer. I painted the back ledge behind the washer and dryer with Dixie Belle paint in the color Hurricane. I painted the yellowing part of the washer and dryer with Dixie Belle fluff paint, and then I followed that up with the Hurricane gray. Removed all the hardware from the cabinets and then wiped them clean. I bought some hybrid contact wallpaper online. I placed the contact paper on all of the doors and the sides of the cabinets. The contact paper was all in place. I was ready to put the new handles in the cabinets. I added a peel and stick backsplash to the laundry sink as well. I hope this inspires you to do an inexpensive laundry room update of your own.
I went to my local craft store and I found these adorable miniature watering cans in all sorts of colors. Here is the glue we're going to be using. It's E6000, which is also known as a cold glue. So I do not recommend hot glue for this project. So what I'm going to essentially do is I'm going to place a little bit on wherever the metals are touching, and then we're going to let it sit overnight. And for video's sake, you guys will see this once it's finished. Now we have some flowers and cutters from nickseasonaldecor.com, and we have all sorts of flowers in different colors. And as I mentioned before, have fun with this. You can choose whatever color watering can that best suits your home. You can also do kind of rusty watering cans. I think those would be very pretty. But essentially what we're doing is we're just cutting these flowers into little pieces. And now I can show you how to work them in. Now we can take our flowers and begin working them in. So one thing that I want to point out is that we didn't work in any styrofoam into these bottom two watering cans. I'm going to show you how to add a piece up top, but the reason I didn't work in any styrofoam is because we're going to really pack our flowers in and it's going to keep them in place. So these two right here were a little loose, so we're going to take a couple more stems and wedge them in. And now they're going to stay exactly the way we placed them. And look at how pretty this is. So now we have these flowers as well, and we carry these in blue, pink, white, cream, and yellow. So for these, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop off the tops. We don't need any of the foliage, nor do we need any of the stem. And then what we can do is we can take these flowers and wedge them in like we've been doing. So keep in mind that this is a nice little decoration for a porch, but we're not building this so that it lasts a lifetime. I'd much rather switch this out every year or so, and then you can also give these as gifts too. I think this would make the perfect gift. Now we're going to do the same thing to the second watering can. So this is the pink one. Again, wedge your stems in. And then don't forget some of these pretty dainty blue flowers as well. So I know I mentioned I was going to show you how to add some styrofoam, but truth be told, let's make this project as inexpensive and easy as possible. So we're just going to take whatever flowers we have left, arrange them, and plop them right in. And we have one blue flower left. I'm going to add a little hot glue, and then whatever that holds to, we'll keep it in place. And here is how our watering can stacker turned out. I absolutely love it, and I think it's so cute. So these watering cans are on clearance right now, and putting this together was really easy to do, and it's really inexpensive. But I think this looks great displayed anywhere. You can place this on your patio, you can place this on your deck, you can also place this inside your home as well. So feel free to mix out the florals for the colors of your choosing, and thank you all so much for watching.
Did you know that Hometalk posts new videos every day? Hit subscribe to get inspired. Now on to the next DIY.
The next time you're at the dollar store and you come across a little metal watering can, be sure to pick one up. I began my project by taking my drill with a small drill bit, and I just made the watering can holes on the spout a little bit larger so that I'm going to be able to squeeze some fairy lights through these holes. Once I had done that, I took my string of fairy lights. You're going to want to make sure that you use a wired fairy light, so the ones that are on a wire, and I push them up through the opening of the spout in the can and up through the holes. This part is a little bit tricky to weave it up and through, but if you turn on the fairy lights, it's a little bit easier to see where they're coming in and out. Once you get it through, you're going to weave it back down through a different hole out the opening again, and then you're going to repeat this process over and over again until you've gone through as many of the holes as your fairy lights will allow. I made sure that the lights coming out of the watering can spout were about 10 inches in length, and this will give me a nice display for my lights. Once I had done that, I drilled some holes in the sides of the watering can. There's a little flower pot pattern on mine, so I just pushed through all the centers of the flowers just so that you could see the lights from inside the can as well. This is my flat back basket that I use every spring on my door. I got this at my local dollar store, and then this is the arrangement that I have that I stick in here every spring and I put it on my door. It's just some florals in a piece of floral foam. You could easily recreate this with any flat back basket as well. So I'm going to take this and hang it up on my door, but instead of using a wreath hanger, I'm going to hang it lower using some of these command strips. So I stick one command strip on the glass on my door and then the other one on the back of the basket. Then I'm going to use the wreath hanger to actually hang the watering can over top of the basket, and this is the display here. So it looks pretty in daytime, but wait till you see it at night. It gives me this beautiful lighted displayed wreath for springtime and just creates a little bit ambiance for my front door. I do suggest using fairy lights that are on a timer so that you can just set the timer and then this comes on at the same time every night. And this is just a creative way to use some fairy lights, a little watering can, and a basket and some florals for spring. I really hope that this project has inspired you to get creative this spring with your door decor.
First thing I want to do is show you how to paint one of these cute little pansies. So I've got the flowers. These are actually taken from hydrangea blooms, and we're going to get just a couple different paints. Now you can do this all sorts of different ways. I'm just going to show you one way that you can do it. Other thing you'll need is a water bottle, just water bottle, nothing special in it, just some water. And I'm going to spritz this down, just a little bit of water. And on the edges, we're going to kind of blend in that purple. Now you can go in real heavy-handed at first with the paint and then spray it down a little bit to dilute it, or you can spray the petals first and so that there's already some water on there. All right, feel good about that. I'm gonna spray it down just one more time, especially like this one in particular. I went a little heavy on there. And then with the yellow, we're gonna go straight in, no watering it down or anything like that. You can though water it down, that's fine too if you want. But I just wanna kind of scrub in the center of my flower, that yellow. And that's all there is to it. Now we're gonna go put these all on a cute little watering can. So the first thing that I wanna do is to grab a whole bunch of greenery and we're gonna cover this up. Don't have a lot of rhyme or reason. I just know that I like little wispy kind of pieces, and I'm using individual pieces from a filler. So basically, when you have a whole stem, you can just take these pieces off individually, and then we're gonna use those to fill that out. So I'm gonna grab some of those as well. I'm also gonna grab these like little berry pieces off of this. That's gonna be great for this. So we'll grab some of those. And we're just gonna build this, glue a whole bunch on there, lots of different texture and colors and leaves, and see what we can make of it. You could also use something like E6000 or whatever other favorite glue you have. I just always use hot glue for pretty much everything I do. We also wanna make sure that we kind of cover the bottom as well. We're gonna put things on top of each other so that we have some dimension too. We don't want this to be flat, so we're gonna kind of build this up as well. Okay, we're getting closer to it being done. We're just gonna add a couple more pieces of greenery. Again, I'm gonna make sure that we cover down at the bottom. I'm not too worried about where the collection of greenery is going. We're gonna put flowers there. It's gonna be just fine. Kind of add just a couple more leaves in an upward kind of direction so that we can get some dimension going. And I also have some, this is preserved and dyed. This is broom bloom. I'm just gonna take and put a little bit of glue on the end of the base of that itself. I'm just gonna sprinkle that in even before we put the flowers in. Normally I put this in last, but let's be a little bit crazy. Let's put it in first, just to see. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put glue all around the base of this flower so that something, anything, sticks. Okay, see that? Remember how I said we're not gonna worry about the base of the stems? Boom, it's covered. We're good to go. Now a few of these have no stems. I am gonna have some that have stems, and that's gonna give us a little dimension as well. And then snake it on right through, and now it's gonna hit something, but then we also have so that it sticks up just a little bit. It's gonna give a little dimension. And I'm going under leaves and on top of leaves, again, dimension. I do want one up there, so I'm gonna get, again, one with a wire so I can kind of fish that on through. And these on the wires I've actually covered with floral tape so that they're green, so they're looking a little bit more as a floral stem. Oh, okay, okay. And then we've got these cute little berries. We're gonna pop those in. We're just gonna lay them in. And then we've got a little bit more of this broom bloom in this lilac color. We'll add a little bit more of that, and then we should be good to go. I'm just putting the glue straight on the bottom of the berry, and then we're just gonna lay them on top, kind of snuggled in on the piece, just for one last piece of kind of fun dimensional goodness.
I'd like to be able to open my back door without letting the bugs in, but what I need to do is measure the door, come up with 33 inches, and go pick up some window screen from my hardware store. First thing I gotta do, open up the packaging, and then I'm gonna lay it out. It's 80 inches long, and as it's 36 inches, I wanna cut it right down the middle. So I'm gonna cut it at the 18-inch mark. First thing I want to do also is lay out a straight board that I can cut across. I'm going to use a razor blade. You can use a pair of scissors. I'm using a razor blade on this one, and I know what you're thinking. He's cutting right through the table. But don't worry, this is one of my work tables. I can just go ahead and slice right through it. Once I get that screen cut, I'm going to separate them. Then I'm going to grab some Velcro. This is a 24-inch strip, and what I'm going to do is lay it out because it comes separated. I'm going to put the two halves together. This kind of Velcro is sticky on both sides with paper that keeps it in. So once I get it all laid out, then I got to measure it. I think I need about good 8 strips. So I'm going to cut these at 3 inches a piece. Go ahead and go down and mark it at the 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21-inch mark. That's going to give me 8 good strips. I'm going to go ahead and cut those by keeping them together. I want each one of these to match up with each other. Once I get them cut, the next thing I got to do is go ahead and place them along the screen on one half where I want to lay them out. It's going to be about every foot or so, maybe a little bit less. The first thing also after that is to peel the backing off one side of the Velcro, and I'm going to place it right next to the edge on one side of the screens, about a couple inches down from the top and the bottom. I'm going to place all 8 strips along the screen. Once I get that done, I'm going to go ahead and peel the backing off of the strips. Take the other screen that I have and fold it in half. It's easier to work when it's halfway folded. Then I'm going to place it right where it needs to go. Press down hard. I want this to adhere to the sticky part of the Velcro. Once I get that first half done, I'm going to go ahead and lay it down and get it all secured on the other side. Again, just some good pressure. Gives me some good overlap, and it's sticking together really nice. Next step is I got to secure it to the door. So what I'm going to use is some pins, and they've got a nice head on there, and it's going to give it some security. So I'm going to put those into the door trim on the outside. Don't need to put too many, but just enough to make sure it stays secure. Now, I do have some overlap on the sides. You could fold those over to give it some extra strength, but I think it's going to hold up just great. Now, look at this. I've got this screen on. I can, if I need to, open my door, open the screens. It's not hard to go out of. And in the afternoon or early morning, I can open it up, keep the bugs out, and let the nice cool air in. It doesn't take much to put it together. And also, if I need to, I can open it up, with some Velcro or some twine and hold it together. I hope you enjoyed this DIY screen door project as much as I did. Our back door that we installed a doggy door was kind of boring, but I knew there was an inexpensive way to make it look a lot better without having to get a new door. First thing I did was I got some sawhorses and put some 2x4s across. This will give some strength to the plywood I got to put down. Next, some really inexpensive 1/4 inch Lawan plywood. As you can see, it's actually really lightweight and it's only 1/4 inch thick. It's got some beautiful grain to it if you ever want to do some staining. But the first step is to go ahead and mark what we're going to do on the top and bottom of the door. I'm going to go with 6 inches on it, but we need to make sure we put some tape down because this type of plywood will splinter. So we're going to mark 6 inches across the bottom and we're going to go ahead and cut it up. I went ahead and used my saw, just went straight across. And again, you got to make sure you put some tape down. And here's the good reason why. Look at how sharp those edges are. No splinters or sanding required. Then I trimmed it to the width of the door, and it's time to put some glue on. A lot of people think that you can just use nails, but you can't. Put some good wood glue down, and it will hold and secure all along without any bubbles. Next, I took a foam brush, and I went ahead and just spread the glue. Now, what you need to do is get it all over, especially around the edges. That's going to make it hold flat. Once you get that, just go ahead and put it up next to the door, and we're going to go ahead and use some really small 1-inch brad nails to hold it in place. Now, the glue makes it a little slippery, so put one nail in one corner, line it up with the door, and go ahead and nail it in. Now, we're not going to overload this board with too many nails. We've got to make sure we do just the right amount. That glue is going to set up in about half an hour. Next, we had to go on the bottom, but we had to go around the doggy door. Wanted to make sure that we got it all covered. So put some glue on, snap it into place, and it doesn't take that many nails, and we're just going to use that brad nailer and put it right on there. Next, we got to take the doorknobs off because we've got to put our trim around the sides. Now, 6 inches along the top, that was the width, but on the sides, we're going to go a little bit smaller with 4-inch. Put the glue on the board, and again, nail it up and down. Not too many nails, just enough to hold it in place. Now it's time to cut out where the doorknobs were. Again, we got to use tape. Take a drill bit on the back of the door, go ahead and outline where your doorknob's going to go. Now, I just went ahead and used my jigsaw and cut out a hole. It's going to come right out, and if you need to go ahead and sand it to make it a little bit smooth, go right ahead. Next, it was time for the last piece. Put some glue on it, and this one we're going to put right in the middle between the doorknobs. Make sure we measure it as straight and perfect. Put some nails in. Now we got to cover up the seams and the nail holes. I went ahead and used some DAP, plastic wood. It goes on pink, but when it dries, it comes the color of the wood. Go ahead on the seams, use a spackle knife to put it in place, but when it comes to the nail holes, all you have to do is just go ahead and put it inside. It dries pretty quick, and just rub it off and get it nice and smooth. Once it dries, go ahead and just sand it down, make it look really good. Do that with all of the plastic wood that you put on and get it nice. And next, it's time for paint. I went ahead and used a primer and paint in one. I wanted to get some good coverage. You're going to paint the whole door. We're not going to go with a dual color on this one. We're just going to go with one. So you're just going to paint everything. I used a little foam brush, about 4 inches wide. It rolls on nice and smooth. I didn't want to use brush because I didn't want any strokes, but here we go. Let's put those doorknobs back on. And do you remember that old door that we had? Look at that. Now, with the trim, how beautiful is that? I only spent about $12 transforming this door. Didn't have to go out and spend $100 to make it look good. I hope you enjoyed this project. We sure did.
Next time you're at the thrift store, pick yourself up a couple of lampshades. To begin my project, I just took apart the lampshade. So I just began with some scissors, cutting apart the fabric and ripping it off. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this little knob back on. Then I'm going to go ahead here with a hot glue gun. I'm just going to attach this faux moss onto the wired parts. I came in with these solar fairy lights and wrapped them all around my lampshade. At night, once the solar lights have charged, they light up and they provide just a cool atmosphere for my backyard.
First, let's prep the pumpkins. I spray painted all of the pumpkins a basic white. I lightly sprayed the pumpkins with a green spray paint, kind of like an overspray. Once they're completely dry, then we can reattach the pumpkin stems. I took an upholstery needle and pierced through the ball to create a little tunnel. And then I push floral wire through to the other side with the folded edge. Then on the other side, you've got two little tails. Just take each one of those tails, fold it around the edge of the pumpkin ball, and just stick it into the side of the ball. Now is the really fun part. We get to glue the pumpkins onto the styrofoam ball. Once the pumpkins and succulents are glued to the ball, you will notice there are still nooks and crannies, so fill those with moss. Finally, tie a ribbon to the wire loop that you made earlier on, and you now have a beautiful pumpkin ball that is ready for hanging.
So we're going to remove this stem. I'm using raw silk fusion mineral paint, and I'm going to mix it with baking soda to give it some texture. And the paint's still wet. Sprinkle a little bit of the baking soda on top and just sort of go like this. While our pumpkin is drying, I've got an ordinary $couple wreath, and I'm going to cover it with water, soften it, and I'm going to let it soak overnight. I'm going to put some Annie Sloan wax on it. I'm going to first put a coat of clear, and then I'm going to come back with a little bit of dark wax. Show you, I have quite the collection of real stems. And all we're going to do is simply hot glue this on and hold it. You can use any kind of a basket. And I have this tall flower pot that I'm going to put in the center. I have some old burlap bags. I'm now going to take a grapevine wreath, and I like to pull it apart a little bit and just fit it right over the top. Now I have a large handful of Spanish moss, and now I'm going to place the pumpkin that we created. I'm going to add some berries. I just picked a couple sprigs up at Michael's. There is our front porch pumpkin decoration, and the beauty of this pumpkin is it will last forever.
So I grabbed this tomato cage and I took some Behr Premium Black Matte spray paint and I took it outside and I spray painted just the vertical poles of the tomato cage. Once the spray paint was fully dry and I cut off the top portion of my tomato cage, I then came in with some very heavy jute twine. You just start at one spot on the circle and you just lay your jute twine over top and hold it there until the hot glue sets. Once the hot glue sets, you just take the jute twine and you wrap it all around the circle. And then I just finish it off by securing it with a bit of hot glue. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process on the other side of the tomato cage. This is my finished tomato cage plant stand. I actually made two to have an elevated look for my fall moms and my fall porch. So to begin, I'm going to take this paint from Dixie Belle in the shade Dry Sage. So I'm going to take this clay dirt here and using a small stencil brush, I am going to tap it on into the semi-dry paint. Next, I'm going to take some gray-black paint and I'm actually going to work it into the dirt, and then I'm going to apply that onto the vase as well. Next, I'm going to take this old wreath form that I had laying around. Then I'm going to take some artificial leaves and I'm going to take some gold wire and I'm just going to poke it through the bottom of the leaf, and then I'm going to work the leaf into the wreath form. And then I'm going to take this rustic dried floral and I'm going to work that in as well. And then this is the finished planter. Also added in some sticks that I just found in my backyard. That gives my planter some height.
The next time you are at your local dollar store, pick up some wire garden hanging baskets. Turn one wire basket upside down and place on top of a second basket. Secure together by using 3 zip ties that are placed equidistant from each other. Take a string of LED lights, hang the battery box inside the basket globe and connect to the top. Turn the lights on and wrap the lights evenly around the globe. both vertically and horizontally. Secure the end of the light string to the basket using a twist tie. Using a leafy garland of your choice, start to tuck and glue the different leaves to the wire basket globe. Now, remember all those chains and hooks that you removed from the baskets? Let's put them to good use. Reconnect these chains of different lengths to the hooks and tighten the hook back together using some pliers. If you have a porch swing, here is a fun way to hang the globes without drilling additional holes into your porch ceiling. Thread the stick through your porch swing ceiling hooks to create a horizontal rod and hang your garden globes from the branch. Use your remote to turn the lights on and enjoy the warm glow of your new outdoor lighting.
I'm now going to stencil my design onto this middle bit of the napkin. I've got a really nice dark green here. Okay. That should be enough. Now this is dry and I've cut it into 4 bits. Using an artist's brush and some water, I'm going to paint around a section of leaves because I want to pull this part out. Any glue that you've got, and then taking one of my pieces that I've cut out, going to put it onto my pumpkin like that and smooth it down. And because it's got a white background, it just blends into the pumpkin. So I'm taking the same gel medium that I used before. And then I'm going to take some gold leaf and using a very soft brush, pat it down. And here are my finished pumpkins. I think it's really nice to have glam ones for a change.
Time to break out of jail. That is the Walmart ball jail. You also need some green reindeer moss. Start by spray painting the Walmart ball with moss green spray paint. Separate the large pieces and stretch out any chunks that are thick. With a can of general spray adhesive, spritz a small portion of the ball with the adhesive. Take a small patch of green moss and press it onto the ball in the sticky area. Press and hold for a few seconds to make sure it sticks. Continue to spray the ball and attach the green moss to the outside. Once you cover the entire ball with spray adhesive and moss, give the entire moss-covered ball an overall coat of the spray adhesive. Style it in a woven basket for a textured boho look. Place in a low, colored glass bowl for a more modern look. And for a traditional look, a large ceramic pot is perfect for this moss-covered ball.
First step of this easy peasy process is going to be to paint our pumpkin white. We'll just take our decoupage paper, get a little hole inserted in it. And now that we've let our pumpkin dry, now we're going to use our decoupage medium gel. You can use Mod Podge, you can use whatever you so desire. All around the entire pumpkin and the bottom. We'll come over here, take our decoupage and begin wrapping it down. We're going to take this off. We'll just start applying our medium liberally on the bottom as well. Now that we've let our decoupage medium glue dry, now we're going to use some metallic gold here. Your jar of paint. Easy, simple fall tutorial that looks fabulous in any home.